Have you ever felt like your brain is running two completely different operating systems at the exact same time? Picture this scenario. You are sitting in an important international meeting, a high-stakes cross-border negotiation, or a fast-paced client presentation. Someone turns to you, looks you in the eye, and asks a direct, complex question in English. Immediately, your brain kicks into overdrive and a physiological reaction takes over. Your heart rate rises, your shoulders tense up, and an internal firestorm of cognitive processing begins. First, you hear the English words. Second, your mind translates those words into your native language so you can fully process their meaning. Third, you formulate an intelligent, nuanced, and strategic response in your native language. And fourth, the most exhausting and agonizing step of all, you attempt to translate that response word for painful word back into English. While you are performing this high-wire act of mental gymnastics, your hypervigilant internal editor is screaming in the background, "Is that the right verb tense? Which preposition goes after that adjective? Am I pronouncing this vowel correctly? Do I sound articulate or childish?" By the time you have painstakingly constructed the sentence inside your head, 3 or 4 seconds of awkward, heavy silence have passed. Or even worse, someone else in the room has already chimed in, taken the floor, and moved the conversation to a completely different topic. You end up sitting there in silence, exhausted, delayed, deeply frustrated, and secretly embarrassed, wondering why you cannot just think directly in English, and why your mind insists on translating every single thought. Early in my career, I spent years trapped in this exact mental translation loop. Every single workday felt like running a full marathon in heavy steel boots. I used to look at my native English-speaking colleagues or hyper-fluent peers and assume that they possessed a superior intellect or a natural gift for languages that I simply lacked. I used to believe that the secret to breaking this exhausting habit was simply memorizing thousands of advanced vocabulary words, drilling obscure phrasal verbs, or studying complex grammar rulebooks until late at night. But here is the eye-opening truth I discovered after years of research, trial, and error. Mental translation is not a vocabulary problem. It is a brain habit. It is a deeply ingrained neural pathway that your brain has practiced thousands of times until it became an automatic, subconscious reflex. Today, we are going to break down the neuroscience of why your brain defaults to mental translation, explore the cognitive architecture of language thinking, and master 3 actionable, highly effective daily exercises to rewire your brain to naturally think in English without force, friction, or mental fatigue. Welcome back to the podcast. I am David, and I am so grateful you are spending your valuable time with me today. If there is one question I receive more than any other from professionals, adult learners, executives, and non-native speakers around the world, it is how to turn off the native language switch in their head and actually start thinking directly in English. To understand why this issue is so prevalent, we must look at how the human mind manages cognitive load. When you learn English as an adult, your native language is already deeply hardwired into your brain's neocortex as your primary operating system for logic, emotion, memory, identity, and spatial awareness. When you try to speak English, your brain naturally defaults to using your mother tongue as a familiar bridge to make sense of the new language. But relying on that mother tongue bridge creates a massive cognitive bottleneck. In cognitive psychology, Baddeley's model of working memory demonstrates that human working memory has a strictly limited processing capacity at any given second. Working memory handles both the storage and processing of active information. When you force your working memory to run a real-time translation engine, simultaneously decoding input, searching for native equivalents, encoding output, and monitoring grammar, you consume up to 80 or 90% of your total mental bandwidth just on language translation. That leaves a mere 10 or 20% of your brain power for actual strategic thinking, active listening, emotional intelligence, and humor. That is why speaking English for just 30 minutes in an important meeting leaves you feeling as physically and mentally drained as if you had just taken a 3-hour final exam. Today, we are going to unpack the neurobiology of language processing, break down the 3 progressive levels of thinking in English, and equip you with concrete daily routines you can practice anytime, anywhere. Even if you live in a non-English speaking country and have 0 native English speakers in your immediate environment. To break the habit of mental translation, we first need to understand how language pathways are formed and reinforced in the human nervous system. When you were a child acquiring your first language, you did not learn words through abstract definitions, grammar rules, dictionaries, or translation tables. You acquired language through direct, immersive sensory association. As a baby or toddler, you saw a round, shiny red object. You felt its smooth, cool texture. You tasted its crisp sweetness. And simultaneously, you heard your parents repeat the vocal sound, apple. Every single time you want to express a thought, your brain forces that thought to travel through that middle node, your native language word. Imagine trying to drive to work every single morning, but instead of taking a direct, open highway, you are forced to take a 5-mile detour through a congested downtown intersection with 10 unpredictable traffic lights. That middle node is the downtown traffic light of your brain. It drastically reduces your communication velocity, drains your mental battery, and creates that painful 2 to 3 second hesitation before you speak. To stop translating, you do not need to force, fight, or mentally discipline yourself to think in English. Willpower alone cannot rewire neural networks. Deliberate, structured practice does. You need to short-circuit that middle node and systematically construct direct neural highways between real-world concepts, internal thoughts, and English speech. Psycholinguists divide the process of thinking in a foreign language into 3 distinct, progressive evolutionary levels. Level 1 focuses on individual sensory labels, targeting single words, physical nouns, and immediate sensory observations. Level 2 encompasses lexical chunks and functional phrases, utilizing pre-assembled multi-word language blocks. Finally, Level 3 involves a continuous inner monologue and self-narrative, where fluent internal commentary and abstract thought take place. Most learners get overwhelmed and quit because they attempt to jump straight from translating full, complex thoughts in their head to having a 100% fluent English inner dialogue about business strategy, financial forecasting, or philosophical debates. That is the cognitive equivalent of attempting to bench press 200 pounds on your very first day at the gym. You will inevitably pull a muscle, feel defeated, and quit. You must build this linguistic neural muscle systematically, step by step. The first practical, scientifically grounded daily exercise to train your brain is sensory tagging, also known as the name game, which targets Level 1 cognitive processing. This exercise is specifically designed to bypass the middle translation node and reconnect English directly to your raw sensory perception, visual, auditory, tactile, and olfactory. Throughout your day, whether you are brewing your morning coffee, walking to the train station, sitting at your desk, or preparing dinner in the evening, look around your immediate environment and quietly label physical objects, colors, textures, sounds, and simple actions in English directly inside your mind. It is crucial to understand the difference between doing this incorrectly and doing it correctly. The wrong way involves relying on mental translation, looking at a coffee kettle, thinking in your native language that you need to boil water to make coffee, and then manually translating that complete sentence into English. Conversely, The sensory tagging way completely bypasses full sentences, grammar, and native vocabulary. You look directly at physical items and tag them as raw sensory inputs inside your mind, such as kettle, cold water, stainless steel, boiling sound, steam rising, ceramic mug, rich aroma, first sip, and hot liquid. Similarly, when walking down a city street, you simply observe and tag items around you directly, like traffic signal, green light, asphalt, pedestrian crossing, cold breeze, brisk walk, winter coat, and engine rumble. Notice what we are accomplishing here on a neurological level. We are completely eliminating complex grammar structures, verb conjugations, and native language translation loops. You are conditioning your brain's ventral visual stream and auditory cortex to accept English as a primary, direct label for physical reality. Doing this for just 2 to 3 minutes 3 times a day conditions your subconscious brain to stop seeking your native language for simple environmental labels. Over a few weeks, the item and the English word become tightly linked, removing the middle translation node for everyday concepts. The second exercise is lexical chunking, which targets level 2 processing using pre-assembled language blocks. Why do so many non-native speakers get stuck translating full sentences? Because they try to construct sentences word by word, using abstract grammar rules. Much like trying to assemble a complex 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle in real time during a fast-moving conversation. Native speakers do not construct sentences word by word on the fly. Extensive research in corpus linguistics and psycholinguistics proves that native speakers communicate using prefabricated, multi-word units called lexical chunks, collocations, sentence frames, and fixed expressions. When a native speaker wants to express agreement in a business meeting, they do not pause to retrieve a subject pronoun, search for an appropriate adverb, select a verb, and check the preposition. They instantly retrieve a complete pre-assembled block from memory, such as, "I completely agree with you on that," or "That makes total sense to me." To stop translating, you must stop studying isolated single vocabulary words from traditional flashcards. Instead, train your brain to store language in context-rich lexical chunks. For instance, rather than memorizing the isolated word decision, store complete functional blocks like make a strategic decision, reach a final consensus, or defer the decision until next week. Instead of simply learning the word opinion, store integrated expressions such as from my perspective, if you ask me, or I hold a slightly different view on. Likewise, instead of isolated words like problem, store complete units such as run into an unexpected roadblock, address the root cause of the issue, or mitigate potential risks. When you store language in your memory as prefabricated chunks, your working memory does not have to assemble grammar rules on the fly under pressure. You simply reach into your mental storage, pull out the complete pre-tested linguistic block, and drop it smoothly into your conversation. This dramatically reduces processing lag and eliminates the need to translate from your native language sentence structure. To practically organize this habit, keep a dedicated chunking notebook or digital note file on your phone. Whenever you read an article, listen to a podcast, or watch a video in English, highlight 3 to 4 word phrases rather than single words, and group them by function, such as phrases for agreeing, phrases for clarifying, phrases for delaying or buying time, or phrases for summarizing. Reviewing these blocks in context conditions your brain to think in complete, natural units of thought, rather than disconnected words. The third exercise focuses on low-stakes internal monologue, reaching level 3 processing through progressive self-narrative. The ultimate milestone of language fluency is maintaining an ongoing internal commentary with yourself in English. But the secret to building this habit without overwhelming your nervous system is to keep it strictly low stakes. Never attempt to practice your internal monologue on high stress, high pressure, or emotionally charged topics when you are just starting out. Do not try to solve complex financial crises, analyze personal relationships, or mentally rehearse a confrontation with your boss in English right away. Doing so spikes your cognitive load and activates your brain's amygdala, the threat detection center, which restricts access to the prefrontal cortex where language retrieval takes place. Instead, narrate your simple, routine, mundane daily actions as you perform them in private throughout the day, acting essentially as a calm, objective sports commentator for your own life. For example, while preparing for work in the morning, you might narrate, "All right, it's 7:15 a.m. Let's open the laptop and check today's calendar. First, I'll clear out high-priority emails. Second, I need to finalize the quarterly slide deck for the afternoon review. Let's grab a fresh glass of water before diving in." Similarly, while running errands or shopping, your mental dialogue could sound like, "I'm walking into the grocery store now. I need eggs, whole wheat bread, and fresh fruit. Let me check which aisle has the organic options. The line on the left looks a bit shorter, so let's head over there." Because there is zero social pressure, nobody is watching, nobody is grading your grammar, and there are no professional or social stakes, your amygdala remains completely calm. When your nervous system is in a parasympathetic, relaxed state, your brain smoothly transitions language processing from high-effort, conscious reflection into automatic subconscious recall. Now, let's address the most common real-world challenge. What happens when you are in a live, high-stakes conversation, actively trying to think in English, and you hit an unexpected wall because you forget or don't know a specific vocabulary word? This is the critical moment of truth. Most speakers panic, freeze, experience a wave of anxiety, drop back into their native language to search for the missing word in a mental dictionary, and completely break their cognitive flow. To maintain your English thinking mode during live conversations without falling back into the mental translation trap, master 3 essential tactical techniques. The first technique is circumlocution, the ability to describe, rephrase, or work around a concept using simpler English words when the exact ideal word escapes you. Circumlocution is not a sign of poor vocabulary. It is the ultimate mark of an advanced, agile communicator. If you forget a specific advanced vocabulary word, like obsolete, simply say something that is outdated and no longer used in today's market. If you forget ubiquitous, say something that you see everywhere you look these days. If bottleneck escapes you, rephrase it as the specific part of the process that is slowing down the entire workflow. Notice what circumlocution accomplishes. It keeps your brain operating 100% inside the English neural network. You are solving a linguistic problem inside English, rather than exiting English to seek help from your native language bridge. You maintain momentum, preserve your confidence, and keep the listener engaged. The second technique involves using strategic native-free fillers. When you need 3 or 4 seconds to organize a complex thought or retrieve data, do not stay completely silent and never use native filler sounds or regional hesitation markers. Instead, use pre-learned natural English transitional phrases to buy vital processing time without breaking your speech rhythm, such as, "That's an insightful angle. Let me structure my thoughts on that for a moment. How can I best frame this for the team?" What we're essentially looking at here is, or, if we look at this from a broader perspective, these transitional blocks act as acoustic bridges. They buy your brain 3 to 5 seconds of precious retrieval time while keeping your speech natural, professional, and firmly anchored in English mode. The third technique is to prioritize clarity over sophistication. One of the single biggest causes of translation fatigue is trying to speak at a higher level of intellectual complexity in English than is necessary. Many non-native professionals feel that if they use simple vocabulary, they will appear unintelligent. Consequently, they attempt to translate complex, flowery academic phrasing directly from their native language. When you do this, your brain gets overwhelmed by cognitive load and immediately reverts to native translation. In global professional settings, simple, direct, crystal clear English always beats overly complicated, convoluted phrasing. Use the core active vocabulary you own with 100% confidence, rather than struggling with complex jargon you aren't fully comfortable with yet. Clear ideas delivered simply will always command more respect than complex ideas delivered with hesitation. I want to leave you with a fundamental truth about neuroplasticity, brain biology, and language acquisition. Transitioning your brain from translating word for word to naturally thinking in English does not happen overnight. It is not an on or off light switch. It is a gradual dimmer dial. In neuroscience, there is a foundational principle known as Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every single time you choose to label an object directly in English through sensory tagging, every time you deploy a pre-assembled lexical chunk, and every time you spend 2 minutes narrating your morning routine in your head, you are physically building and insulating new myelin sheaths around the English neural pathways in your brain, while allowing the old translation detour to weaken from disuse. On some days, when you are well rested, hydrated, and emotionally relaxed, thinking in English will feel surprisingly light, effortless, and fun. On other days, when you are tired, overworked, sick, or stressed, your brain will naturally seek energy efficiency and default back to your mother tongue. That is completely normal. Do not judge yourself. Do not feel discouraged, and do not interpret it as a personal failure or lack of progress when your native language creeps back in. Simply acknowledge it, take a slow, deep breath, and gently reset your focus back to simple, direct English associations. Consistency will always beat intensity. 5 minutes of deliberate, daily internal monologue will do infinitely more for your fluency, cognitive speed, and real-world confidence than 4 hours of passive grammar drills on a Sunday afternoon. That brings us to the end of episode 5. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which of today's 3 daily exercises, sensory tagging, lexical chunks, or low-stakes inner monologue, are you going to commit to practicing starting today? Share your commitment in the comments below. If this episode gave you practical value and helped you understand your brain better, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this podcast with a friend, colleague, or fellow learner who is working on their English fluency. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me today. Keep practicing, keep training your mind, and I will see you in episode 6. Take care!